Hey everyone, we have Katie MacDonald with us here today. Katie, thanks so much for joining us.
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks for having me, Ted.
To give a little background on Katie, so Katie, we actually met Katie with one of our customers, Optimizelys. She's still there, been there for about 4.5 years, coming on her 5-year anniversary here soon. For people who don't know, Optimizelys is about a 500-person company. They've received $250 million in funding from some great backers like Benchmark, Andreessen, Goldman Sachs. So they're really going on that IPO trajectory. And then Katie also has experience from Salesforce and Savo, which we'll talk about during this interview. But Katie, let's just jump into it. Tell us a little bit more about your background and how you made it into the world of enablement.
Yeah, so I guess you could say my journey into enablement started back in college. My degree is actually in secondary education. I am a certified high school teacher, believe it or not. But I graduated in 2008, the peak of the recession. So there weren't a ton of great teaching jobs available, but people are always hiring for young, hungry, salesy type people. So my first job was actually as an SDR. I don't have that on LinkedIn, but I was an SDR at Savo before I got promoted to being an account executive. And this was really sort of the beginning of sales enablement in terms of people having that in their title. I remember hunting for leads, and it was more on field enablement, product training, product marketing. There were very few people that had sales enablement in their titles. But I realized pretty quickly that enablement was a field that I would really enjoy because it combined two things I was good at, selling and teaching. So anyway, moved up the ranks, doing the hustle and bustle of being an SDR, which I think was honestly some of the best experience I could have asked for as someone who's now in enablement, knowing, the grind it takes to build a healthy pipeline and having the mental toughness to make dial after dial after dial and pitch and pitch and pitch and really own that message. So eventually was promoted and offered a job as an account executive in the Bay Area and started selling Savo as a sales enablement solution. Eventually was able to make the transition to more of a solution consultant role, so supporting our field reps and spreading the message on what does sales enablement mean and how do you build a sales enablement program. So eventually got the opportunity to go out and actually practice what I preach and build enablement programs. So that's really sort of the foundation of how I got here.
That's awesome. Was there, that's a really great career path. I love seeing enablement leaders who kind of come through the sales ranks and into enablement. Was there kind of a tipping point during your time at Savo where you said, hey, actually, I want to kind of go not to the dark side, but switch over to the other side where I'm doing full-time enablement rather than, hey, let's go close more deals for the rest of my career?
Yeah, absolutely. So I agree. I think it's tremendously important for anyone who's in enablement to have known the experience of carrying a quota on your back, right? Like knowing that it's feast or famine, right? You can have the best quarter of your life and go on vacation, and the next quarter you're eating ramen for dinner. So having that experience really gives me an appreciation for my audience, which is the salespeople. And as for sort of the moment when I was like, all right, I really want to do this, it was when I found that my conversations with the people I was selling to, I wanted to be in their seat. It wasn't that I wanted to be selling them what I was offering. It was, I want to be doing what you're doing with the product that I'm offering. So once I realized that, that's when I started looking for more enablement-focused roles.
That's awesome. I always tell our team here is I love selling to sales enablement buyers, and I think you love this so much you became a sales enablement leader. So that's awesome to see you actually start to basically go into the role you were selling to. That's awesome. So you made your way into Salesforce. I'm actually reading Mark Benioff's latest book, Trailblazer. Tell us a little bit about your time at Salesforce, best SaaS company in the world. What did you learn there running enablement? Tell us more about that experience.
Absolutely. I mean, there's no better place to learn about sales enablement than Salesforce. Like you said, they are the leader in SaaS software, which has perks and disadvantages too, right? Like our Salesforce was extremely talented, also selling a really great product to a really educated buyer. What I think was so special about my time at Salesforce was one of the areas I was focused on was sales leadership enablement. And my boss at the time was really a thought leader in realizing that the key to having a successful enablement program is having sales leaders not only be really strong in their managerial skills, but be really spun up in the enablement programs that we're running. So how do we enable the enablement? And honestly, learning that from her and being a part of that team and focusing on leadership enablement has fed every program I've built as a result of that. You will not be able to scale an enablement program unless you have sales leaders on your side and enabling the enablement. So that was a big, big piece of what I took away from my program there. And Salesforce they're a unique company in that they really invest in their sales team, right? Like at one point, I think the enablement team was like 100 and something people, which is crazy because I can't even think of 100 people doing enablement in general. So it was a phenomenal experience, but I'm really happy I made the leap from Salesforce to a smaller company because you can really feel the impact at a smaller company versus Salesforce, which is such a phenomenally moving machine. But it was a great, great experience all around, just picking up how do you really empower leaders to empower their teams.
And let me double click into that. And I hear this all the time in the field of, hey, we need our managers really owning enablement, right? That's really what drives the behaviors. Was there, let's say, one tip or one program that you could kind of give the audience of what was super successful at Salesforce from a leadership enablement perspective? Is there anything that you remember during that time?
Yeah, absolutely. So the team I was primarily working with was brought on during the acquisition of ExactTarget. So it was this big migration of moving the leaders from the ExactTarget team over to the Salesforce team. And, you know, you'd think like, okay, everyone's on Salesforce, everyone kind of does things the same way. Well, that's not exactly true, right? So one of the big initiatives I took on was building this pipeline productivity playbook. And the entire purpose of this was to make sure that the leaders on the ExactTarget side were very, very crystal clear in exactly how they can be really proactive in understanding the health of their team's businesses. So what are the right reports to look at? Here's a link to a report. Here's how you use this report. Here's how you analyze the data. How can you tell if someone's healthy or not? And then what are the best suggested tips to improve the health of that pipeline? Or next level, how do you help them advance that pipeline down the funnel? And this was a really intense project because it required support from not only sales leadership on both sides, but also sales operations. Where do we get the data from? How do we interpret this data? So it's pulling a lot of different pieces in together. And that's actually something that I think any business could use, right? Like, what are the best reports? Where do you get the best data? And then how do you interpret that data and act upon it?
Yeah, and that's critical, right? Because at Salesforce, you guys probably use Salesforce the best out of anybody, so you have the biggest treasure trove of data, but it's your job to actually make meaning out of that. So that's probably a huge challenge for you, but I'm sure you executed it really well. So let's switch gears a little bit to Optimizelys. So you show up at Optimizelys, you mentioned earlier you want to have more of an impact. I want to go through your Optimizelys experience, but I remember one of the big programs that you've revamped even a couple times is onboarding. Tell us more about how you onboard, and you do this at a global level too. Tell us about this program and what's been so successful about it.
Yeah, absolutely. So when I think about the wonderful thing about being at a company, as long as I have been at Optimizelys, is you get to see the company change throughout the years. And that's really impacted how I view enablement now. Like, I remember I used to get so bogged down in analysis paralysis, right? Like, what is the perfect onboarding program and how do I build it and how do I get it done? And you know what? The best thing you can do for an onboarding and enablement program is just get it done. So I've come up with this tagline of iterate to perfection. And that's exactly what we've done with onboarding at Optimizelys. When I joined, we were very much so a younger, more product-focused company that need a lot of butts in seat training. So we had a 2-week-long, you come to headquarters and we just teach you everything you could possibly need to know. We send you out there and hope for the best. And that did work really well for a while. It was a really engaging program. However, we began hiring more field reps. So we began moving up market and selling less of a product and more of a solution. So we started to think like, okay, the cost of bringing everyone in for 2 weeks and the time drain on me personally was just getting to be overwhelming. So we began to think like, okay, how can we scale this better? So this is one of the ways we've been able to leverage WorkRamp is we digitized about 70% of what that 2-week bootcamp was, because truly what some of the sessions were just our leaders talking about the products that they built. And you don't necessarily need to sit in the classroom to get that, right? So what we wanted to do was make a digital program where they could get that level 100 knowledge on their own in the field, come to headquarters, so that rather than listening to a leader like John Nerona talk about personalization, maybe we have more activities-based. How do we apply what you learned on video into a real life scenario? So now the program is significantly shorter, which is wonderful in terms of a live commitment, but it's also more dynamic. And being able to apply what you use is really where you see transformations in behavior. Like we could sit here and talk for an hour and people could hear what I say. It's like, okay, that's cool, but if there's no application of it, you're not going to really apply that to your business, right? So anyway, we've evolved onboarding so many times to, one, make it more efficient for us, make it more scalable for the field, but then also help success. So it's all about evaluating where you're at and where you need to be and making those iterative changes along the way, because you're never going to get a home run on your first try, right? Because the needs of the field change, the needs of the business change, and then also, like, realistically, like, perfection doesn't exist in enablement, right? So being able to get it done well, but then build on that and make it better and better and better is the key to success.
And that's a great explanation of the program. And I always debate this with other clients, and I see it varying. What has been like the sweet spot in terms of exiting onboarding, would you say, more the intensive period, whether that's a couple weeks, couple months? What's been, and you've tried different iterations, what's been the length for you that you felt has worked the best?
So I really think that in terms of people coming to headquarters, the value is being there for at least a week, right? Because more than anything, it's about your network. It's about who you know, and it's about knowing where to pull in the right people at the right time. The people that join Optimizelys and sit in San Francisco have such a huge advantage because they have all these resources there. So the way we wanted to design the program, it's funny, like we started with 2 weeks butts and seats, and then we swung the other way that we were going to do 3-day intensive once a quarter and bring everyone in for just 3 days, whoever started over the course of 3 months. That wasn't nearly enough. So now we've landed at about a 4-day session every month, depending on how many people we hire and when we hire them. And I think that that's a really nice spot, because when we went to once a quarter, there were people who were there who had already been there. It was still valuable to be in the field, do their digital learning, and then come to headquarters that really saw the biggest benefit. If you were too early, it was way too much. If you were too late, it was way too little, too late kind of thing. So for us, the sweet spot is, in my perfect world, if I could manage recruiting to hire people at a specific time and get managers to hire people when I want them to, they would have 2 weeks in the field learning and 1 week in butts and seat with me in San Francisco. And then the ongoing enablement post bootcamp, right? So what do managers need to be doing to instilling the teachings that their new hires have gotten? How do they keep driving that evolution? How do we keep improving them and developing them? And we're not quite there yet. I'd say we have level 100, level 200 down really well, but it's that after 30 days, what is the right cadence for ongoing enablement? We do have ongoing things for them to view and assess, but we haven't quite nailed down that perfect, days 30 through 90.
Okay, perfect. And let's kind of talk about that kind of ongoing enablement too, actually in the context of how you're enabling. So you actually were at headquarters for several years. So you're basically absorbing as much as you could from the leaders. You knew everybody. And then you recently moved to Fairfield, Connecticut to basically take on a remote enablement role. And Optimizelys is pretty global too, so it actually works really well with your model. But what tips do you have for a lot of people out there who actually are doing enablement remotely? Have you learned anything about doing it that you would want to share with the audience?
Absolutely. I mean, the number one thing that leads to a successful enablement program, remote or not, is your network and your connectivity to the people at your company, right? So I make sure to have recurring one-on-ones with sales leaders, with account executives, but then also my product marketing teams, my product specialists, just making sure that, one, they don't forget me, but two, as an enablement person, I'm not the expert, right? Like, I'm the person that kind of pulls all the things together and makes it all fit. So it's important for me to be dependent on these other roles, and it's important for them to believe that what I'm going to deliver to the field is tangible and real for them to execute on. So it's all about having that network, maintaining that network, and building trust within that network so that people come to me and say, Katie, we feel we need this. How can we make this work? And it's a partnership, right? So as much as I can be with people without physically being in the room, that's what I absolutely recommend. So if you're new and starting in a remote job, you do have an uphill battle. I'm fortunate that I have a lot of these connections already, but being able to be as present and with your subject matter experts as well as the community you're serving is what's going to make the difference. You can't just be this person far off in a tower saying, do this to do your job better, ready, set, go. Like, that's just not going to fly, right? You need to establish credibility, and you need people to more or less, they need to like you, right? Like, you need to be an engaging, dynamic person who's not only providing value, but makes it easier for other people to be successful in their jobs.
That's awesome. And then you had the added benefit, everyone loved you, so it made it super easy for you to transition remotely. But I think you're pioneering this model where more and more companies, I'm seeing it, have enablement professionals around the world, because it just enables companies to scale that much faster. So last
100%.
question on Optimizelys. I got to experience this a little bit firsthand, just getting to know you, is the company, you talked a little about this earlier during onboarding, but I'd love to kind of touch upon it from kind of a culture and overall perspective. Is you move from kind of selling a product in your early days, coming out Y Combinator really hot, to selling an enterprise grade solution. So that means different types of clients, different types of CS. That means moving upstream, bigger deals. Yeah. How has that culture shift been? We see so many of our customers going through that. And it is a hard shift. How has that shift been for your team personally, and how have you enabled it to go so well over the last couple of years?
Yeah, absolutely. So it's an evolution and it's still evolving, right? So when I started at Optimizelys, you could actually buy Optimizelys online for like $18 a month, which is just wild. And we realized in order to be, a 100-year company, we need to sell more than just an A/B testing tool, right? We need to sell something that is of value to our customers to make data-driven decisions off of. And so many companies are going, there's a lot of companies coming out of Y Combinator in particular, it's like, we have this great product, but how do we make this something that's going to be transformative to our customers? And this was a challenge for us, right? Like, we went from selling, really low ARR type contracts to manager level people, to having to sell to VPs and higher, because, our contracts can be significantly steeper than what they once were, and you can't sign off on that budget if you're a low level person. So it's been a bunch of things to get us to there, right? It's been reassessing who are our buyer personas. What do they care about? What value does our product offer to these different people? It's been a lot about ROI demonstration. How can we prove that what we're doing is going to get you the value that we're promising and justifying the cost? But then also being able to stand confidently in front of a C-level person to like, look, this is how we think you could be running your business better, and here's how Optimizelys can help you make these decisions with better data, with better clarity. And so all of this was huge for us. So it was messaging, but then also process. We just launched a brand new sales process last year with the intent of providing better visibility into what to do and when to do it in order to close a deal. So before, it was really just like, pitch Optimizelys, send a contract, you're good. And that doesn't work at sort of these larger enterprise scale opportunities. So if I were going to say to anyone who's looking to make this transformation, I would say grant yourself some grace, right? Like, you're not going to figure this out on try one. It's going to take a lot of different iterations, a lot of different talk tracks, a lot of different messaging. Like, luckily at Optimizelys, our product gives companies the ability to experiment and try things. So that's a core value for us. which I love because I can try anything, and if it blows up in my face, I say, look, it was an experiment. It didn't work out, but I got some data, I learned some things, and this is how I'm going to evolve as a result of it. So it's an ongoing process for us. We're selling more, we're selling bigger deals, which is great to see, but you can always sell more, you can always sell better, you can always sell faster, which is why this concept of continuous iteration and less of, if you think about it from a developer's perspective, it's less about a waterfall. It's more about this agile method of enablement that we really need to bring, because you're never done in enablement. You never do something once and wash your hands of it and it'll be good for life, right? Like this stuff, everything's evolving, everything's always changing, and you just need to have that agile mentality.
That's awesome. You could coin the term A/B testing for enablement because you own that space.
There we go.
That's awesome. Well, we'll end on this question. You've had so many years in enablement. You're one of the most kind of senior people that I personally know. I'm curious, what are one or two tips you would give your younger self if you can kind of turn back the hands of time and say, hey, Katie, remember these things or try these things if you could go back in time?
If I could go back in time, the number one tip I would give to myself is get connected to your sales leaders. Know their pains, know their challenges, and let them truly believe that you're there to help make their team more productive. They will make or break you. If you have a leadership team that doesn't think you're providing value, it doesn't matter if you build the most beautiful, fantastic, well-designed program in the world. If they don't believe in you and they don't think you're doing the right things, it's not going to fly, right? Because realistically, enablement programs have 2 to 7 people maybe supporting fields of hundreds. You can't scale yourself. It's the managers that drive everything. So being their ally, being their resource, being their person, that's going to make all the difference to you. So I would say, Katie, like go talk to that, as not even just the SVP of sales, talk to that frontline manager, talk to the person sitting across from you, like understand their pains and let them know that your whole purpose of being there is they're your customer. They have their customers, they're my customer. So how do I give them what they need to be successful in their job?
That's awesome. Well, Katie, I loved hearing about your whole background from your early days at Savo through Salesforce and then doing such an awesome job at Optimizelys. I appreciate you sharing all these tips with the audience. They're going to love it. And congrats on all the success you've had so far, and can't wait to see where you're going to progress in the future.
Thank you, Ted. It was great talking with you.